Hey everyone, Mike Huseman here. I would like to welcome you to the first episode of Off Season After Dark, part of the After Dark Network. You may have seen me on SEC After Dark and then doing some writing for Mike Farrell Sports. I'd like to introduce my guests here. We have Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Life and Eric Froton, one of the preeminent college fantasy experts you will see anywhere. So, guys, I appreciate you being here for the first episode. What the plan for the show is going to be, long term is in the off season. I will talk about, those off season things, coaches carousel, portal, rule changes now, the playoff stuff is prominent now. And then in season, transition to, I'll probably do a lot of G5 stuff there and kind of other niches that a lot of people aren't talking about as much. But what we're going to talk about first today is some head coaching changes that we saw this offseason, and just wanted to ballpark, throw around what some of the coaches we like are, what changes we want to see, and what we're curious about. So, Thor, any of these guys who, you stand out to you? For me, it'd be interesting seeing Scott Frost back at Central Florida. That could be an interesting one.
Yeah. Interesting that they're and thanks for having us, Mike.
Absolutely.
On the maiden voyage. We appreciate it. Scott Frost is interesting going back to UCF. Gus Malzahn's a good coach, and you run him out of town to bring in a guy. Obviously had a lot of success there the first time around, and then was a nightmare at Nebraska. And not only a nightmare, he was a guy they did not trust off the field. Right. So, I mean, it's not which coach Scott Frost are you getting and which citizen Scott Frost are you? No idea. Right. I mean, it in some ways it's the riskiest hire of the offseason. And in other ways, it wasn't a risk because he's already done it there one time. That one is just hard to, that one could go either way. That one could go either way. The ones that I was really excited about, Zach Kittley at FAU. Obviously, you get the video game offense there, so you love to see that. I'm interested to see Dan Mullen at UNLV too.
Yeah. I have the second half of the alphabet on the next slide, so we can fit it on there. Yeah. Froton, anyone that's really popping out to you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. As Thor mentioned, Dan Mullen, 2 10-plus win SEC seasons out of 4 at Florida. Now over there at UNLV. Knows how to run an offensive system, has Anthony Coheed and Calandria over there at quarterback. Very excited about such a development. So certainly Dan Mullen. And then if we're talking about Scott Fish Bowl, of course, it's on my mind.
Freudian.
Yeah.
Scott Frost, excuse me. Well, let's not forget about the other welcome back story in the Big 12. Rich Rod back at West Virginia. Speaking of 10-win seasons, 3 of them he put on the board there for the Mountaineers back in the day. Very excited. Geno Smith excited. Pat White also excited. Tavon Austin's excited. Noel Devine's excited.
All of them.
Oh, Schmidt's excited. Oh, gosh, I can't wait. Everybody's fired up to have Rich Rod back at West Virginia.
Two under the radar ones that I'm excited to see. I thought Charlotte made a home run in getting Tim Albin from Ohio. He was a good coach.
Great.
And Charlotte is a G5 gem, I think. Like, you have a lot of new, they got a lot of the Jerry Richardson estate. So they're upgrading campus-wise, facility-wise, and that's a city where you can recruit in and should be able to. And then Casey Keeler, good hire at Temple. Stan Drayton was one of the worst FBS head coaches of the past decade.
And why were you apologizing for him the whole time, Louis?
I never did that once for him. But
no, just kidding. We hated the Stan Drayton hire.
But the some people think, well, Temple is a tough place to win.
No,
Al Golden won there. Jeff Collins
now when you have a good coach.
Steve Adazio won there. Matt Rule won there. All 4 of these guys got better jobs. So and I think Keeler will be a good hire for them.
What you said about Charlotte, it would apply to Temple 20 years ago?
Yes.
They would have been 30 years. They would have been saying the same thing. Oh, you're in an NFL city and you have all these resources and you should be able to recruit, and blah, blah, blah. Parallels are well taken there.
They are. Bronco Mendenhall, I think will at least be a stable hire at Utah State. The dude has been solid everywhere, and leaving New Mexico after a year probably hurt them. They got Jason Eck from Idaho, but I think Bronco will be a good hire for them. And then it pains the Thundering Herd member of me, but Southern Miss did good in hiring Huff. They're going to be I think in terms of total wins, they will be the most improved FBS team next year. They won 1 game last year. They'll win a lot more this year.
Yeah, I bet on them at what was the odds? Something crazy to win the Sun Belt. So yeah,
was it like 400 to 1 or something like that?
It might not have been quite 400 to 1, but like crazy. It was something really, really high. And with the amount of guys, you not only bring in Huff and then several of his assistants, your coaching staff is, you got the Sun Belt winner from last year, that coaching staff. By the way, nobody, as you know, Mike, Mike, you didn't put this in your intro, but you're a professor at Marshall. Like
I am.
Mike's, Mike, like you're on campus there, so you can vouch for this. They last summer at this time, nobody had Marshall winning the Sun Belt. So not only, and by the way, he was on the, where you didn't have next year contract, like it was the lame duck head coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he still won the Sun Belt. And then a lot of the roster that he had there, they brought it over. Like a lot of the key players. And then, they did good in the portal outside of that. But yeah, Southern Miss's talent, you can think of them as Marshall of last year at this time, in my opinion.
And under the radar offensive coordinator hire, Blake Anderson. Head coach at multiple places, will be Southern Miss coordinator.
Yeah, that staff is really good. Yeah.
We'll move on to portal QBs. I know this is always exciting and seeing who's going where, and how these tie in with the coaches. But I feel like the three of us might not agree with the top two. I certainly know Thor won't. Froton, what do you feel about the portal QBs and who's at the top of this list?
Well, obviously, Nico Iamaleava certainly won the press, at least portion of this, in terms of who was the most talked about transfer. In terms of the top, the next one, I would put John Mateer as my second most impactful transfer. No offense to Carson Beck going from Georgia to Miami. But, Mateer accounted for 39 touchdowns last year, ran for, in terms of the running and the passing, he had 3,000 yards, also had over, 800 yards rushing. Just a rare sort of a feat in the modern day where the clock doesn't stop after every first down. That certainly would juice the passing numbers from a fantasy perspective in previous years. Now has sort of suppressed them. Only 19 quarterbacks last year threw for 3,000 or more yards, for perspective. Wow. So I would put Nico and Mateer as my top two in the list, but still quite a few others, certainly to be respected down the list that transferred.
I put I'd have neither of the top two guys, but I have maybe even in the top five. I'd have Mateer 1, I'd have Mendoza 2. I probably have Gronowski 3. We don't see Maverick McIver on this list.
Of course, Gronowski.
Gronowski, dark horse Heisman.
By the way, Thor, Maverick McIver 50 on this list.
What a joke!
Yeah,
what a joke. Maverick, the guy's going to throw for 5,000 yards this year.
Chandler Morris was 49, one ahead of him. Who I think Virginia.
Chandler Morris should be. They should be in the top 10. He should be on the top 10 of this.
Yeah, I also like. Another guy we're not seeing here, but Thor mentioned before, very happy with the Zach Kitley hire at FAU. He gets Caden Veldkamp, WKU's old QB, to go to FAU and play there. Veldkamp will be a very promising player fantasy-wise and just overall to watch.
Yeah, and it seemed like they never really trusted him at WKU, right? Froton, like they never... they were always trying to give the job to someone else. And even when Veldkamp flashed, then it's like, let's bring in TJ Finley, or let's bring in this guy, and let's try one of the Helton, someone from the Helton family at quarterback. You know what I mean? Like it was just really weird. Maybe him going to FAU and getting away from the Heltons will be a good thing.
Well, we were a couple of generations down the trough in terms of offensive coordinator from Kit Lee, who went to Texas Tech, from Ben Arbuckle, who went over to Wazoo. Now he's at Oklahoma with Mateer. They both went together. But now when reuniting, essentially, bringing that offense to FAU, going to be able to pick the groceries and be able to really, essentially, I mean, in theory, Zach Kittley could do what Lane Kiffin did down there at FAU and just put up some just absolutely monster point totals before he goes and moves on and takes a Power 4 job.
Great.
He just needs his motor, Singletary.
Just needs his motor.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But Belkamp's a good quarterback. He's going to put up numbers there too.
Yeah, Easton Messer too. I mean, he's the one who's getting drafted from a college fantasy perspective. It's Easton Messer, who's frankly been going in like the second round of startup best ball type formats that I've been doing throughout the season. So major draft capital for Easton Messer, guy who was decent last year, but with the Kelly system coming in, he's the nominal number one.
Yes. And
that's a place you want to be eating in the Zach Kelly system.
Now this part of the list, I'd have a bunch of these guys on the first part, list. Like Wiegman, if he's got his head screwed on straight and he stays healthy, Wiegman is going to get drafted in the first couple of days of the NFL draft. But I don't know if either of those things are going to happen. He has all the physical. He has first round NFL draft tools. Connor Wiegman does. But yeah, the inconsistency has been pretty wild, and then staying on the field. Sometimes I wonder, his ability to go through the progressions as well. But there's big league tools there, and he has found a very good coaching staff that badly needs him. Houston's offense last year was an absolute travesty. If they can figure it out with Wiegman, the light goes on, that would be huge. Gio Lopez absolutely should have been on the first list. Gio Lopez, for me, probably top 5 transfer portal guy. Gio Lopez was awesome last year. People just didn't see him because he was at South Alabama. But he's a swashbuckling, scrambling lefty. Gio Lopez is so fun to watch. And now you're stuck on Belichick Island with your girl Jordan Hudson, and there's all the weird stuff going on there. Now Gio Lopez, he's like the Pied Piper of this merry band of misfits. I don't even know if Bill Belichick will be focusing on anything on the field, but Gio Lopez can ball. And I had to shout out Caden Salter too. And you and I have talked about this offline, but it's pretty fascinating going from, they've had so many schematic offensive shifts. It was Sean Lewis the first year, and then they were going hyper tempo, and then Dion got mad at him. I still don't know what went on there, but demoted him, and then Shermer, and then you did the pass happy thing through last year. Well, now your offense with Salter, you can't do the same thing. Shadir Sanders was a legit high end pocket passer. Caden Salter, tremendous athlete. The passing comes and goes with Caden Salter. And Liberty, there was some frustration at times because the times where the lights got shut out on their offense, it was because Caden Salter was playing hero ball, but he's not a good enough passer to do it. But if you can figure out how to keep him within his means, he's such a gifted athlete. And when it's working together in conjunction and he's not playing like the YOLO ball thing, that's when that guy is a flammable maker. But yeah, you can't stretch him outside of his means. So I'm really curious how Shermer and Dion, how they construct a totally new look offense. Shadir gone, Travis Hunter gone, Will Shepard gone, Jimmy Horn Jr. gone. Who's the other one? I'm forgetting the receiver.
Wester
gone.
Yeah.
You're replacing everybody, and you hope your offensive line is better this year. You progressed last year. You're hoping it is again. But yeah, totally new offense. I'm curious about that one. Froton, in college fantasy football, where are you at with Salter, and where is he being drafted? I haven't gotten deep in yet, but I'm very curious.
Yeah, with Salter, keep in mind, I think he was in the 3,300 club, 3,000 yards, passing 300
yards.
These
are the ADPs for
rushing
college fantasy QBs. Yeah.
Yes, I have him right now. I just am just putting the finishing touches on my rankings. I have him in the same ballpark as Byram Brown, Reclamation Project from USF, Taylon Green, Arkansas. He threw for 3,000 yards and had 600 yards rushing last year quietly.
One unlisted and portal guy I think could be pretty high, and is Reese Poffenberger going to North Texas, where Morris did a great job.
That's my boy. I love that guy. Yeah.
And Eric Morris is a heck of a coach there, so I like Poffenberger a lot at North Texas.
That guy's got a bigger arm than people realize. Like,
yeah,
like from being in a small frame, and you're going to an ideal system. You know, obviously Morris vacated that by transferring to Virginia, but yeah, Byron Brown Froton. Houston and I were actually talking about him on the telephone today.
Yeah.
What? Okay, Froton, let me ask you a question. Was Byron Brown injured last year and it was underplayed, or was, they weren't telling the public, or was there something going on behind the scenes there? And either way, why did he go back to USF? I'm curious your take on this.
Yeah, well, I would think that Bryce Archie Griffin wasn't keeping him off the field with his stellar level of play. We'll put it that way. So yeah. I would assume there was something to that in terms of him being banged up or at least altered in some way, because there's no reason why Bryce Archie should be playing ahead of him. And he's been, in terms of the spring, he's considered the starting quarterback. And with his ability to run, he would be certainly a fantasy boon to your quarterback room. So I think he has to be respected. He's in like right around the 40-45 range in terms of QB rankings right now for me.
Yeah, but he boomer bust, isn't he? Like,
very much so.
Yeah, like I think what I told Houston on the phone before earlier today was, if Brown, he definitely will not finish around like where his ADP is. He's either going to be top 10 or he's not going to be in the top 200.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
one or the other. Absolutely,
one or the other. Yeah, I mean that is one of this season's big swing for the fences.
And he was a good example of what I call the solo threat quarterback, where QBs who can run but don't really have the ability to complete passes consistently and accurately, at all levels of the field. Anybody like that, one, they're more apt to be injured, and two, there's always somebody that a offensive coordinator is looking at saying, man, I wish somebody could hit a 20-yard out hole shot. Yeah. Somebody, they're always wanting to do that. At the end of the day, you have to be able to distribute the ball through the air. And that's what I'm always skeptical of when it comes to running quarterbacks. And that was really the case with Byron Brown, who was a top 5, if not the number 1 quarterback overall last year in college fantasy drafts.
All right, so I'm gonna give my critiques here, because I haven't said anything publicly on college fantasy, but I got some opinions here. Klubnik is ranked way too high. Arch Manning is ranked scandalously too high. That's a joke. What he should be a top 3-4 pick in the entire FBS in a fantasy draft. Get out of here. That's name value alone. Avery Johnson with the running, I could see the justification for that. Sawyer Robertson would be top 5 for me. John Mateer might be 1 for me overall. I would need to go through the schedule a little bit more, but
they have the number 1 toughest schedule in the country. Talked about that a few weeks ago on SEC After Dark. Yeah.
Yeah, but the system and the playmakers there, Mateer, he can ball.
They got a good running back now to take some load off too, and Jade Knott coming from Cal.
Love Jade Knott. Yeah, so those guys be out there. For me, Navarro probably. I might have Navarro a little bit higher too, just because of the running, and I really like Dampier for the same reason with the running. So I'd probably prioritize him. Those would be my initial takeaways on that. Froton, where are you at on those guys?
On any of these guys? Yeah, sure. Mateer, I have plenty of them, obviously. I think you're being a little harsh on Cade Klubnik. They're going to be throwing the ball quite often and, scoring a lot of points over there in the ACC. As mentioned, Mateer is going to Oklahoma. He will be playing a extremely difficult schedule. Even got Michigan shoehorned in there week 2.
Froton, you want to do side bet of who has more fantasy points next year, Mateer or Klubnik?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk off here about the terms.
Throw a helmet in there, so to speak.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Course,
yeah.
Let's do the helmet bet.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I kind of feel. I feel like Josh Hoover is being underrated.
Josh Hoover being slept on.
In the type of leagues that I play in, which I am a major proponent of the 6-point passing touchdown leagues.
Hey, Froton, what did you tell me earlier should be done to commissioners of 4-point touchdown throwing leagues? You can tell the audience. I feel like.
Oh yeah. No, it's not. No, it's not compromise.
Is this how the compromise of 5 points in the 50-teamer came about?
Yeah, that is. I was so angry about the 4-point passing touchdowns. I was just like, at least compromise. All right, fine. Fine, we'll compromise. But Josh Hoover, second in terms of returning passing yardage, almost threw for 4,000. I think he will again this year. And just because he doesn't run, he's not a running quarterback. He gets knocked down. But in the Tadpole Bowl, we reward 6-point passing touchdowns for the better passing quarterbacks. Then he'll be just fine.
One guy off list, but from a very prominent team. I was curious about your takes on, guys. Dante Moore at Oregon now. What do you guys think fantasy-wise on him? We've had multiple years in a row, Oregon's QBs have lit it up fantasy-wise. How do you feel about Moore?
Where's he at on the ADP?
I can tell you.
Do we know?
27.
Oh, for he's QB 27?
27.
I think that's too high. Personally, sight unseen. I think that's a little high.
He is ahead of Pavia, Lagway, and Sorsby. They're the guys right below him.
Yeah, I'd have him below those guys. And Dante Moore doesn't run around a ton, right? So he's going to have to make it on the back of his – and they have obviously really good weapons. Evan Stewart went back, and they brought in a couple of portal receivers to replace Tez. And but yeah, to me, I wouldn't have Dante that high. What about you, Froton?
Yeah, I've got him in the QB 35 range, frankly. And
that feels fair. Yeah.
Reason why he still hasn't been named the starter yet. You do still have some competition from us and Novosad coming, so there is that factor. And heck, if Novosad's good enough to push him a little bit, if he struggles as he did at UCLA, they're not going to sit and wait around for him at Oregon. So there is a little bit of conjecture when it comes to his evaluation. So I think that knocks him down a little bit. But I'm seeing him go in early best balls, right in the round 8 to 10 range of that. So that's definitely above where I currently have him ranked as well. Like you said, that QB 27 range sounds about right. Maybe even a little higher. I think I've seen him go.
Yeah, makes
sense. Another guy who just barely off list, who was one spot ahead of Moore that I was curious about your take on. Matt Sluka became persona non grata at UNLV last year. Now rejoining with his former head coach, Bob Kenny Chesney at JMU, where they will have a good chance to win their division in the Sun Belt. So,
what is he, QB 26?
26, yep.
Yeah, Sluka should be top 15, arguably top 10. We know his game. There's no hype. What was you said, Froton? Single threat?
Solo threat.
Yeah, he one of the best ones we got. That guy's going to run for over 1,000 yards next year, and the touchdowns are all going to be there. Chesney, he gives you the free looks with the passing game, the short stuff, and we know from the year before that Sluka can do that. He can run that system. So yeah, I'm excited to see him back. In my opinion, he should be a top 10, top 15 college fantasy quarterback.
Another guy I just realized off list, we talked about Byron Brown and how much he dropped from last year. Kyron Drones has done the same thing. He was a very high pick last year in a lot of these, and they were disappointing last year as well. And now he doesn't have Tootin there, to take some of that load off.
Where is he? I don't see him on this list.
Drones, he was off list 44.
Okay, yeah.
Where are you at on him? I think even that's high for Kyron Drones. I was a major detractor of his last year. Something for the fact that it's like, all right, we're talking about Virginia Tech. There's just going to be some biblical resurgence offensively when you have a defense first head coach. Like, all right, you got to show me that. And sure enough, he didn't even – I don't even think he cracked 18 touchdowns. I think he threw like 16, 17 touchdowns last year. It was not anything particularly amazing, and he didn't run as much. And true to form, as I mentioned with running quarterbacks, guys tend to break pocket. They are more likely to get injured and need to get banged up, I think, a little bit. So, I have Drones down in the QB 60 range. So I have him even lower than 44. I don't have any early best ball shares Kyron Drones.
And one guy I like who's not on this list but was 51 over, Miller Moss, formerly USC, now is teamed up with Jeff Brom at Louisville. Feel like it's a good situation for him. Where do you have him, Froton?
Yeah, well, Miller Moss, somebody I certainly have history with.
You sure do, Froton.
Have a lot of history with Miller Moss. I'm out here in San Diego, so I went to a lot of USC games last year. And last year, when I went to the spring game, I watched him throw 3 interceptions in the first half, and I called, this man will not finish the season as the USC starting quarterback. No. Simply doesn't have the arm strength to do what you see the typical quarterback for Lincoln Riley wants to do. Now, that was correct. Obviously, Jaden Mayava took over and is now the quarterback this year, and as he waits for Husan Longstreet to take over next season. But where he's heading over there to the legitimate QB whisperer, one of the greats, the flying offensive Brom brothers, if anybody can resurrect him, then they can. He's not going to run at all. You're not going to get any of that out of him. But, I mean, look at what he did with Tyler Shuck, another guy that Thor and I have history with.
We sure do.
He just makes guys get drafted. It's just an amazing talent that he has. So I do think that I have Miller Moss in the QB 57 is where I have him pegged. And that is only out of respect to Jeff Brom. Otherwise, I would have him far, far lower based on what I've seen with my own eyes and the fact that he is limited in terms of his arm strength.
Yeah, and for 6-point throwing touchdowns, you put him, a little bit. I assume that's what your rankings are for a ton. But in a 4-1, you'd have to bump him down even more, right? Because he's not going to give any rushing production whatsoever. Yep,
absolutely. And you'll love Louisville. The conference, everything, you'd love to see it happen. But, hey, he's in a good spot, and a lot of college fantasy football is opportunity, and there's no one really pressing him for that job.
Hey, Froton, you know what I don't love?
Sorry, I took a sip. What, my friend? I'm sorry.
When someone charges $20 for a cameo, and then you hire them, and then they direct message you, and they ask for thousands of dollars to fly out to your private event that you're not holding.
$1,500. That's what Tyler Shuck wanted. He wanted $1,500 from us.
He tried to shake us down, Shuck. We've never told this story publicly.
For a 90-second draft order pull for the 50 teamers.
For our 50-team college fantasy league.
Wanted him to pull the Big 12 when he was on.
And Texas this was years ago when he was injured all the time at Texas.
Yeah, Tech. He didn't even play for Texas Tech yet. He was coming out of Oregon, and we asked him to do this. He had zero steam or buzz.
Shout out to Troy Franklin for being the best cameo drafter of all time.
Troy Franklin was great. Yeah, Troy Franklin. We've had some good ones over the. Taj Boyd was good.
James Skalski was awesome.
Yeah, I was saying Hudson Light up there. Yep, Skalski is who.
The SEC shorts guy was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah,
he did 2 of them. Yeah, because he did the Big Ten shorts one too. Yeah.
Yeah. I always appreciate when you pay for the service and then they do it, as opposed to not doing it, trying to shake you down, and then not returning your money.
For several 2,000 percentile increase.
We kid Tyler Shuck. We kid. No, we don't. That actually
$1,500.
Literally happened.
So let's moving on to running backs, guys. Sure. For this is the average draft position for college fantasy running backs.
Let's see it.
I'll just first thing that pops up to me. I feel like Jeremiah Love might be a little low at 11. That team's going to be running the ball a lot behind a good offensive line. He will score a lot of touchdowns. Froton, do you disagree with that, or is my take okay?
No, I do agree, and frankly, that's something that we've seen out of the community where the big refrain is he slowed down towards the end of last year because he got banged up and he got injured, so he didn't quite run the same way that he did early in the season. But my gosh, I mean, will they divvy up snaps? Yes, Jadarian Price will get some work. Yes, Aeneas Williams will get some time. Jabron Payne's back. None of those guys transferred out for some reason. So, yes, they will all get work, but the floor is so high for Jeremiah Love. And just watching his tape, I've watched all of the top 50 running backs over the course of the past week or so. That's really what I've been drilling down on. He is electric with the ball in his hands. And I know Thor will get it to it as well, but 4.5 yards after contact, important dominance metric. you're watching him hurdle people from an athletic point of view, the stop ability. Like the way he changes directions and he's right back up to speed. Athleticism off the charts. He's incredible. And I think that, it's probably not being accounted for enough, the fact that his floor is so high. I have him as the RB4 this year.
Okay.
I'm with you and not these ADPs. He's being underrated for contextual reasons. Oh, they, spread around more of the workload last year. He was banged up at the end of last year, but like you can't do that for each guy. That's not a year over year thing, right? Like, if he's healthy for the entire year, and I would expect him to get a larger percentage of the workload this year, merely because coaches are pragmatic and they want their team to do better. And he's the best running back in college football. So that's just going to happen. Darius Taylor, I think, is overrated here. Froton and I disagree about this. I think Desmond Karen Reed is also a bit overrated, if I may, in terms of fantasy perspective. In fact, I told Froton, Ishmael Mahdi, my boy, the transfer to Arizona. I'm trying to do another bet with Froton on this. I think Ishmael Mahdi outperforms Desmond Reed, the consensus RB1 in the college fantasy community right now. I think Ishmael Mahdi has more fantasy points this year than Desmond Reed.
That is a hot take that is absolutely scorching.
Yeah.
Scorching.
Love Ishmael Mahdi.
Wow. I'm not saying I don't like him. I'm just saying better than Desmond Reed. Wow. I can't get on board with that. You're feeling spicy today, Thor.
I like Mahdi, man. I like Mahdi.
An interesting fantasy one too will be former MAC guy Cy Bangura with the Gophers last year, going back to Ohio, a team that's going to run the ball a lot. He could be a decent, ADP one as well. I've seen him in the mid-20s. It's some of the ADPs. Is that about where you have him, Froton?
Yeah, Bangura the drum, absolutely.
Yeah. Bangura the drum slowly, Froton.
Bangura that drum. Yes, I have him right around the 25 to 27 range right now with Bangura. Just a tick down, but, it's the same tier that I think we're probably all swimming in when it comes to him. And he certainly has, at the very least in shallow leagues, RB3 flex potential. In deep leagues, he could be in every week RB2, which would be amazing. We've already seen him do it at Ohio. Even though Albin moves on to Charlotte, they promoted from within. So, wheels up. They literally promoted the running back coach. All right, go get him, C.A. Bangura.
Another portal guy I was curious about was Kanye Udo, leaving Army to go to Arizona State. What are your thoughts on him?
That kid can play. He's good. Yeah, and we know that they run in that system. I don't know that he'll get the work that I would be very surprised if he got the work that Scatterby did. But perhaps as a runner, right? The thing that we don't know about Udo is what kind of a receiver is he, because they don't throw the ball. Right. And Scatterby had so many catches, right? So that part of it I don't know. But yeah, like as far as on the ground, I would expect him to get bell cow touches, and I think that kid's a good runner.
My issue is that you got Kyson Brown, who's still there. They bring him in. Scatterby leaves. You have their number 2 running back. Does Udo beat him out and get the clear number 1 touches? That's my concern with him. I think he's a little overvalued right now, and I'm kind of staying away from it. But whichever one gets the job, they got 4 returning starters and 68% of their offensive line snaps back in a Big 12 where they're favored to win it, and they're going to be bludgeoning teams. So that is truly the Dillingham RB1 is a premier fantasy spot.
Another portal guy I think should be on this list that I've seen in some top 15s, Ahmad Hardy. Was at ULM last year, now transferring to Mizzou. They've been a very consistent team who've run the ball pretty well. I think he could be a decent fantasy, but especially with a running QB where they might lean on the ground a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Froton, where do you got Hardy?
Hardy, I have him actually pretty darn high. And if you notice in the drafts that I've been going in, I've seen him go in the second, pretty much the bounce back of that second, third round turn. which is premium real estate, obviously. You know, you're talking about a second-round startup running back, all 137 teams. That's high-end stuff. I watched him last week. I like what I saw out of Hardy. He certainly, when it comes to the transfer running backs, he's as good as it gets. Nobody really there to push him at Missouri. You know, you do have a freshman coming in, but it's hard to really come in there and take over. But, man, right out of the gate for ULM, he was very good, very explosive. I like him. I don't love him. There is a transfer running back I like more, who is way off everybody's radar, that is going to SEC team that I think will actually outperform Hardy, even though Hardy has second-round draft capital. This guy isn't even getting drafted. So
is it Rasul Faison from my alma mater, the Gamecocks?
It is not. He's got issues. Obviously, he's a 1,000-yard rusher coming out of Utah State. Yeah. He's having. We don't know if he's going to be eligible yet. That's the issue with Faison. Otherwise, it's maybe the Oscar Attaway show. I am a huge Darrell Robinson fan.
Ooh.
Dude, I know he's a deep cut. He's not on any list. I don't see him getting drafted anywhere. I have him much, much higher than everybody else. I'm taking him in literally the last round of 30-round best ball drafts. I'll be all over him in tadpole and underdog formats. He was injured this spring, so he didn't practice, so he kind of didn't have much buzz. So Alston, maybe Jeremiah Cobb, kind of still getting drafted. Dude, Darrell Robinson, his hips, connecting his cuts, his vision, like he's fast, but dude, the way he sets up his cuts, so deceptive. He is going to play right away. He's the best back in that room. I watched all three of them to make sure I was on the money. He's going to come into Auburn with zero fanfare, and he's going to take that room over for an Auburn team I think is going to be a lot better than people realize. Another transfer we didn't get a chance to talk about, Jackson Arnold, who I think will have a resurrection over there at Auburn, is there. You got an incredible wide receiver core with Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson. Eric Singleton comes in from Georgia Tech. Just loaded over there. I like what I'm seeing, and I think Darrell Robinson is going to be a very impactful, one of the most impactful transfer running backs in the SEC.
It's a good take. Thank you. Yeah. We'll move on to receivers now. I feel like you already talked about Easton Messer, but no surprise here in the top three. These guys are all big names with Jeremiah Smith, Jordan Tyson, Cam Coleman. Guys who've caught a lot of balls so far. Eric McAllister, a guy pairing with Josh Hoover, who we talked about earlier, another team that's going to throw the ball a lot. Does your top five look like this, Froton?
Yeah, the nominal, it's pretty much, it's a top three, with Smith, Tyson, Ryan Williams. Those guys are my top three. Okay. And then
you do have Williams ahead of Messer?
I do have Williams ahead of Messer. Then dude, I have to go with the talent there. When you can levitate and float through air, I'm sorry. I have to put him in his own tier of his own. I would put Messer there as the wide receiver 4. And then, with 5, it kind of comes a lot of personal preference. For me, personally, I'm a Cam Coleman guy. I think Cam Coleman, as we just discussed, is absolutely out of hand. Anywhere I can get him, I want him. Comes to being a true X, 6'2", 205. Just navigates the sideline beautifully. He's so comfortable. He wants to be on the island and working the sideline. I did notice there's a one ding on him that I have in terms of profile. When he's crossing the middle, he does get a case of the alligator arms and is afraid to kind of, he knows what's coming with that safety, with, the short slants where he's going to get popped by a linebacker. He does have a little issue with drops with that, but anytime he's working the outside, be it, running the whole shots, just a straight go route, running the comebacks, the outs. Everything he's doing, he does it all at every level, and he's just a physical specimen. He would be my 5.
Good to know. Yeah. 2 portal guys that didn't quite crack this list I wanted to bring up were Trebor Pena, left Syracuse, now at Penn State. I've seen him top 15, top 20 receivers in some cases. And then Dejon Stribling left Oklahoma State, now at Ole Miss, where he will battle Caden Lee, who's on this list. But I feel like both of those guys could be fantasy gems in their new systems.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have, in terms of both of those guys, we've seen them go in premier spots. I think they're absolutely at the top of their class. If there's some others I would look at, Kevin Coleman, I'm a fan of. He's going to Missouri. Just in terms of his ability to create space, he's not big. He's 5'11", 180, but just the way he creates space, wins off the line, wins on the break, just incredible. He even did some work on the outside and was winning some go balls. With Stribling, that outside spot for Ole Miss that we saw Trey Harris excel at, certainly that door is wide open from the walk-in. Harrison Wallace is also there. He transferred from Penn State, but I certainly give Stribling the advantage. Right. I'm a big Caden Lee guy out of the slot, so he will have to kind of fight for targets there. But, Penn State needed Pena so badly. They went and got Devontae Ross as well from Troy. But, Pena, to be able to have that safety blanket that Drew Aller isn't going to have without Tyler Warren. I mean, let's not forget about Penn State. They did not throw not a single completion to a wide receiver against Notre Dame in the playoff. That is a absolutely mind-boggling, sadly true statistic. So that's, obviously that's a major, major problem. I will also say I'm excited about Chase Soule, who's going from ECU to Iowa State, taking over Jaden Higgins' primary outside role. That could be pretty exciting too. He's getting some pretty high draft capital around round 4.
Thor, who are some of the receivers that stand out to you or that you think are worth mentioning?
Deion Burks is interesting. At 13, I think that's fair. I wouldn't advocate for that anymore. I was actually going to ask Froton if he'd done any scouting on wide receiver 21 on this list. It's a guy who's caught my eye, so I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I can't see. Who is it? It's blurry on my screen.
Ted Hurst,
number 21. Ted Hurst.
Just wondering.
Yes.
Ted Hurst.
He was on my 50 team squad last year.
Huseman discovered him.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on his game, Froton?
Huseman discovered him. I thought somebody else discovered him, but maybe you're right about that.
He claims that he did, but we were wondering if he had any takes on Ted Hurst.
Unless you taught him, or unless you were his coach in high school, which I wasn't. We'll
give the coach Mean Gene some credit here.
Yeah. It's Mean Gene. Mean Gene discovered him. Mean Gene. We gotta give it to Mean Gene. He owns Ted Hurst. I can't realistically sit here and wax poetic about him without giving Mean Gene his credit.
Yeah, he coming. Our co-host Gene Clemens he's sending his 21st wide receiver 21 on the ADPs. That's something special there.
An interesting one just off the list here. 26 is Matthew Coleman. Presumably the new Nick Nash at San Jose State. You'd mentioned so much of college fantasy's opportunity. Is the opportunity there for him to get Nick Nash-like numbers?
I'm hearing a lot about Dan Scudero, who's there as well. He transferred in. Leland Smith as well transferred over from Purdue into that room. So, Matthew Coleman has certainly been getting the premium draft capital out of that room. He's considered the replacement. As you know, Nick Nash had 171 targets last year, led the entire nation in targets. So, hey, it's a topic of discussion in the college fantasy community. What is going on in the San Jose State wide receiver room? Everybody wants to know. But you're seeing Scudero start to, based on a little bit of hype, he's starting to crawl up there too. So, and then I just saw Leland Smith go in like the 18th, 19th round, I want to believe, of the last best ball we've been playing. So all three of those guys are getting taken. It has all the makings of what I call a power 3 wide receiver room, and that stands for potent offense, wide receiver 3. And you frequently will see, like in past years with Ohio State, with Alabama, those high-end rooms of yesteryear. Just because there's a nominal top 2 receivers doesn't mean that third wide receiver, who's pretty much a starting guy, isn't going to rise and overtake one of them and be a real factor. We saw it with JSN, Jethan Smith and Jigba. We saw it with Igbuka. We saw it with Devontae Smith years ago. We saw it with Jalen Polk over there at Washington when Jalen McMillan went down.
El Busto,
yeah. We're talking about.
I was moving to NFL. I'm sorry about that.
Just college fantasy. So
sorry about that.
Each year you see a different number 3 wide receiver who is pretty much thrown by the wayside come up in those high-profile passing systems and become that number 1 and be a real legitimate top wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for your fantasy team. So those are the type of rooms I definitely like to try to look at, and that certainly, sort of is the same sort of a thing we're seeing draft-wise as the draft season progresses with San Jose State wide receivers, all 3 of them getting some draft capital because of that.
Another guy from my 50-teamer squad I briefly wanted to ask about before we move to tight ends, Toledo, Junior Luther Vandross. Where are we at on him? I liked him. He was reliable last year. But...
Dude, I love Junior Vandross, and there's no Jerwan Newton either.
No.
Anymore. He's gone. They bring in Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, Trayvon Rudolph, to kind of fill that Jerwan Newton role. But look, he's coming in to Junior Vandross's room. I have a ton of dynasty shares of him because I went after that Toledo room, and it has served me extremely well. Where there's been a lot of turnover in a couple of my wide receiver rooms from a dynasty college perspective. Having him in 2 of those, in a 20-teamer and a 16-teamer, really helped lessen the blow. I'm a huge fan. He's going between, call it round 4 and 6 right now. Probably call it closer to 5, 6. And I'm very excited what he has to offer. Him and Tucker Gleason. Challenging for 3,000 yards.
Jackie Gleason, Froton.
Tucker Jackie Gleason. He will throw for 3,000 yards this year, really. 19 QBs threw for 3,000. Tucker's going to be one, baby.
They also brought in Chip Trainum at running back, the well-traveled.
Chip Trainum.
Yeah.
Yep. 4th school. Yep. He gets around.
Sure does.
We'll hit tight ends here for our final slide of the night. Thor, who you high on? Who you looking at this position here? Anyone?
Froton knows I like Joe Royer, and who is you know that I like Justin Jolly. So I would toss those 2 guys out real quick.
Jack Endries leaving Cal, going to Texas, where that's probably game plans.
Jack Endries, my boy.
I'm going to let Froton talk on that one because that's his boy. But the other one I would toss out, Terrence Carter, Texas Tech. They use that in that system. Jalen Conyers obviously last year. That would be a guy I would toss out. And then other one I have to. I have heard all kinds of hype this year, this offseason about tight end 14 on this. Tanner Koziel, who is no longer at Wisconsin. Interestingly enough,
no longer in Wisconsin.
There was competition for him. He transferred to Wisconsin, but then there was more competition for him during the spring or whatever. And I don't know how quickly Wisconsin met their. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But he transferred down to Houston. Koziel has gotten all kinds of hype that I've been hearing from folks. So Koziel, in my opinion, should be higher than that. And Terrence Carter would be the other one. But I'll step aside so Froton can talk about Endries for a second.
Yeah, Jack Endries, his dad is a huge Robert Endries,
your boy,
huge analytics guy, big college fantasy football fan, Mr. Robert Endries,
your boy,
and a friend. Like I've for the last couple of years, I release a tight end column where I go through some of the analytics, what I look at when it comes to sleeper tight ends, things of that nature, and I had featured Jack last year as being a sleeper coming in last year. And boy, did he make me look good. And transferring over to Texas, takes over that Gunnar Helm role. I think he's better than Gunnar Helm. I got a chance Thor and I saw him at the Combine. It looked lumbering to me, like top heavy, like a tall, sort of like a Minotaur type.
He's just a guy. He's a jag.
Guy. And Endries going in there, I think he's going to be able to take that role over and expand upon it. And Helm was awesome last year. He was legit number 1. I feel great about that. But then, if we're talking about number 1 tight end, it's Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq could get 80 targets. I had the pleasure of seeing him in person where they played against UCLA last year. And dude, seeing him in a line against where there's other humans, like mortals next to him, man, Kenyon Sadiq is put together and a freak athletically. All his stuff. He still caught over 30 passes last year with Terrence Ferguson as a second-round pick there in the room with him. He is going to dominate. He's going to be a cheat code at tight end. Watch out, absolutely, Kenyon Sadiq. And if I had to go with a sleeper, I think Jack Velling is getting drafted at tight end 22. Come on now. He got 60 targets last year. All right, so, keep in mind, that was the Mel Tucker offseason catastrophe. You had Jonathan Smith from Oregon State come over. He took over Velling. He took Childs over. There was a total late reset for that Michigan State team last year. They're in a bad spot. Now they're a year in. They're going to be better. Probably be bowl eligible. And Jack Velling gets another 60 targets. He's not going to score one touchdown this time. He's going to have 500 yards. And he's going to have 5 touchdowns, which is, boom, wide tight end 1 on your team material.
Well, thank you all the viewers out there. I appreciate you being here for our maiden episode of Off Season After Dark. Look forward to seeing you in the future, and please send me all your questions. Give me a follow on YouTube, Twitter, anywhere else you can find me. Thor, Froton, I appreciate both of you being here immensely.
Thanks for having us.